Good afternoon, everyone. My team and I would like to present to you our project. What is the impact of recreational use of green spaces surrounding urban environments on biodiversity in terms of species richness and abundance? Next slide. So this topic is hugely important as protected areas and national parks are widely recognised as the main strategy for biodiversity conservation. And it has become even more important with a rise in human populations in urban areas that have led to an increase in recreation in green spaces. But what are the impacts of this on wildlife and on the surrounding ecosystems? We know that human presence can be detrimental for biodiversity, but is having areas of access and no access enough to support biodiversity? Or is a well-trodden footpath impacting a larger area than we realised? Next slide. So this is why Team SDG has undertaken the task of finding out what is really happening to understand on a global scale the impact of recreation on biodiversity in areas that are exposed to high volumes of human activity and also hold protected sites. Next slide.
Yeah, so I'm going to explain the PECO of our research. So our study takes PECO instead of PECO because we will see the exposure as compared to the counterfactual. So the population is green spaces that are used for recreation, and then the exposure is the presence of private and public right-of-ways, and then the counterfactual is protected area in which there is no public access, and the outcome that we see is biodiversity as measured by species richness and abundance. Next slide, please. So this is our search strategy. So we actually use German and English language to capture as much research as possible. And yeah, and we use 5 databases, basically, Web of Science, Scopus, CABI, and we screen around 16,000. We got 16,000 records, but we screen less than that because of the time constraint. Next slide, please. So this is the screening, the inclusion criteria for our systematic review. So for the population, we only include study that assess a green space that has access and no access to the public, because we want to see more like natural area, wilderness, protected area that is actually natural, and then they use that for recreation. So it's not like football pitch or playground. And then for the exposure and counterfactual, the inclusion criteria is the study has to have a footpath. The study area has to have a footpath or public right-of-way. And then the purpose of use is recreation, not for lodging or not for harvesting food plants, etc. And it must include comparison, like before and after, or control and intervention. And the outcome is either richness or abundance. And our kappa, because we have some adjustment in the beginning, whether we want to include Europe only or any other countries. That's why our initial kappa is moderate agreement, but later on, as we agreed, it's actually, it's quite a good agreement. Next slide, please.
Oh, so I'm muted, okay. So yeah, we structured our data extraction sheet in the following way. So for the population data, we also recorded which type of green space we're talking about. So is this just like any forest? Is this like the specific ecosystems? And we will present the results of this a little bit later. We also checked the coordinates, and especially if how close the next urban area is, to see if this green spaces are relevant for the population of these urban areas. Then the exposure data, we looked more closely at the type of recreational use, if this was reported, and in many cases, I think it was reported, and also the intensity of use. So if there was any data available, saying like approximate like the numbers of people using these green spaces. And for the comparator, we were looking at if for example, like the land with no access was like in private ownership, or it was in public ownership, but like protected, such as like the inner parts of national parks, for example. And also the type of the level of access, if there was access for the public. And the outcome data was only like species richness. So like we checked if the study found out that there has been like difference in the species richness in the different areas. And yeah, here's our roses diagram. So all in all, like all the databases summed up together, we had like about like 40,000 records first, but of course, like many of them were duplicates. So in the end, we ended up with like close to 10,000 unique papers. And oh, I see the duplicates are missing here, but like the rest were duplicates. And then we screened about a little bit more than like 100 of them. And of these 119 we found, so it's 119 plus 15. So of these, we found 15 that were suitable. After the abstract and title screening, we could retrieve 14 of them as full text. And after the full text screening, we still had like 8 articles remaining. And we excluded most of the articles that we excluded based on outcome, because they measured something else, but not species richness. Yes, and so yeah, in the end, we end up with 8 articles from 8 unique studies that were also then used for the critical appraisal. And now I hand back to Nancy for the preliminary results.
So one of the findings that we discovered was some different types of environment that each study focused on. And in this pie chart, you can see that there is a variety of forest types. But I think what's most evident to me is that we were looking at studies that were more focused on closed canopy systems. Yeah, next slide. Rosaria, is that?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, this is just the map representing like where our studies are conducted. Well, initially we want to focus on Europe, but because so little studies that we found that only focus on Europe, so we broaden our search to any other parts of the world. Yeah. Next slide. Thank you.